For 20 years, people asked Johnny Cash why he always wore black. He said it was for the poor, for the prisoner, for the sick, for the young men dying in Vietnam. Then, in 1971, he wrote a song to explain it properly. He wrote it the night before a concert. He revised it twice in the dressing room. He walked on stage with the lyrics written on index cards. When he finished, the audience stood up. This video is about what Man in Black actually means and why Cash wore it until the day he died, long after the Vietnam War ended and the world moved on. The black didn't start as a statement. It started as a habit. In the early days at Sun Records, Cash and his band, Luther Perkins on guitar, Marshall Grant on bass, didn't have matching stage clothes. They wore what they had. What they had was black shirts. Simple as that. 3 young men from Arkansas who happened to own black shirts and played them on stage together for the first time. The audience noticed. It looked deliberate. It wasn't. But Cash kept it. As his career grew, the black became more intentional. He stopped wearing other colors on stage. The rhinestone suits and cowboy boots of Nashville held no interest for him. The black felt honest in a way that sequins didn't. People started asking. Cash started thinking about the answer, because the black had always meant something to him that he hadn't fully articulated yet. It went back to Dyess, Arkansas, to cotton fields, to the Depression, to the people who had nothing and were told to be grateful for it. It went back to Jack. By the late 1960s, Cash had become something more than a country singer. He had played Folsom Prison and San Quentin. He had stood on the side of the prisoner when the music industry wanted him to stand on the side of respectability. He had performed for soldiers in Vietnam. He had seen what the war was doing, not on television, in person, to young men who reminded him of himself at their age. Boys from Arkansas and Tennessee and Georgia who had been given a rifle and sent somewhere they didn't understand, to die for reasons nobody could explain clearly. The black was for them. It was for the prisoners at Folsom who wrote him letters. It was for the poor families in the Mississippi Delta who worked cotton from before dawn and had nothing to show for it. In 1971, Cash met some students from Vanderbilt University at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. They asked him the question everyone asked: why black? He started trying to answer. He realized the answer was too long for a conversation. So he went back to his room and wrote a song. He revised it twice before going on stage the next day. He wasn't sure it was finished. He walked out with the lyrics on cards. He sang, "I wear the black for the poor and the beaten down, living in the hopeless, hungry side of town. I wear it for the prisoner who has long paid for his crime, but is there because he's a victim of the times." The audience stood before the last verse was finished. The verse about Vietnam is the one Cash felt most urgently. Each week we lose 100 fine young men. That was the weekly death toll in 1971. Not a metaphor, an arithmetic. 100 young men a week coming home in boxes. Cash had been to Vietnam. He had played for the troops in 1969. He had looked at their faces. He had understood that most of them were boys from places like Dyess. Poor, patriotic, given no choice, sent somewhere they couldn't come back from whole, even if they came back alive. He wore black in mourning for them, the same mourning color you wear to a funeral, because that is what it was, a permanent funeral for permanent losses. What does it mean to wear mourning every day? To decide that the losses are ongoing enough that the mourning should never end. It means you haven't looked away. It means you've decided that looking away is not something you're willing to do. Cash wore black on the Johnny Cash Show, his ABC television program, every week in front of millions of people who didn't know why. Now they did. The song reached #3 on the country charts. It was the clearest political statement a major country artist had ever made. Nashville was not entirely comfortable with it. Cash did not care. The Vietnam War ended in 1975. People asked Cash if he would stop wearing black now. He said, "Apart from the Vietnam War being over, I don't see much reason to change my position. The old are still neglected. The poor are still poor. The young are still dying before their time. And we're not making many moves to make things right." He kept wearing black for the rest of his life. Through the addiction years, through the comeback years, through the American recordings era when a new generation discovered him, through the Hurt video, he was buried in black. The song was written in one night, revised twice in a dressing room, performed with the lyrics on cards. It is 2 minutes and 52 seconds long. It is one of the most honest political statements in the history of American music. Not because Cash was a great poet, but because he meant every word. And because the things he was mourning were real, and the mourning was real, and the black was real. If this story meant something to you, share it with one person. And subscribe, because there are more stories where this came from. Every one of them true. Every one of them matters. He wore black for the poor and the beaten down. He wore it until the end.